So this is the last lecture of the quarter, but also the last lecture of chapter 5. Chapter 4. So 4.5. We're still dealing with the American Revolution. It's just now that we're dealing with section 5, which is independence. This will be the ending concept of, hey, now we've already declared that we're free. That was done on July 4th, 1776. Now we're looking at the concept of actually winning freedom from Britain and forcing them to recognize it. So when we left off in 4.4, we were dealing with the war in the north. We talked about Saratoga and then Valley Forge. We also talked about the war in the west and the war at sea. This section is going to start off talking about the war in the South, and what we realized with the war in the South is the war in the South is a lot more brutal than what we see in the war in the North, and a lot of that has to deal with patriots fighting against loyalists and the British. It's not just one group. We do have them having to fight. The patriots are having to fight other colonists as well. The Southern population is more loyalist than the New England colonies, and so we start to see a lot more fighting, or a lot more brutal fighting that way. The other issue is we're just struggling. The Patriots are struggling pretty mightily. They thought that the help of France and Spain would bring the war to a quicker end, and it doesn't. And the British are frustrated as well. The war is still going. The Patriots are a lot scrappier than they expected, and now they're having to fight longer and across the ocean, which is a lot more expensive than what they thought or wanted. So we see frustration from both sides. But the British are going to change their plans, and instead of fighting in the north, that's when we start seeing the fighting in the south. When we look at that fighting in the South, the first colony to fall is going to be Georgia. Georgia is the last colony to join the Revolution, and their first to fall. It happens in Savannah, and I mentioned it in the reading. But the reason why Savannah is going to fall so easily is because a former slave, Guamano Dali, is going to actually show the British how to get into Savannah without being seen. It's one of the short-sighted aspects of the Patriots at the time, is not accepting and understanding the depth of knowledge and ability of slaves and former slaves in the army, and it's just being short-sighted and racist. We see the British being short-sighted and sexist without looking at how women are helping the Patriots, and so it's just. It's a good play by the British to use Guamano Dali, and it gets them Savannah pretty easily. After Savannah falls in 79, then the British start marching north into South Carolina. Charleston's going to fall, and then it's going to get up into Camden. Battle of Camden is by far the worst defeat for the Patriots. We go in with 4,000 men. Gates is expecting more, but they don't show up, and so he starts this battle with 4,000 men, and at the end, it turns out to be where only 700 are going to come out of it. Gates makes a series of mistakes, from overmarching his men, feeding them the wrong food the night before and the morning of, and then putting our worst troops, our least experienced troops, on our left flank, which was exactly opposite of where Cornwallis has his best troops. Cornwallis always put his best troops on his own right flank, which would be our left flank as you attack. And we just get mopped. It's just embarrassing. Gates will lose command after that. Nathaniel Greene has to come down and take over. And after that, what we do start to see is some pressure from not only Nathaniel Greene, but also from Lafayette, who's going to be commanding a couple thousand Continental Army troops as well. In your book, it talks about Kings Mountain, which is going to be just over the hills, or just on the other side of the Appalachian Mountains, or up into the hills. And this is the Kings Mountain. It's not on the quiz or anything like that, or on the test, but it is important to know because it gives the British go into it with high expectations of an easy victory. And the Patriots just aren't going to put up with it. They don't want to be told what to do and how to live. And they don't really care if it's from a leader close by or the king. They definitely don't like the king telling them what to do. And so that's why they're fighting for the Patriots. But they were individuals who are going to do what they want to do. And if you challenge them, especially the way they were being challenged, the way you can think of it is their manhood was being challenged. They kept being told that they're horrible, they're nothing, they couldn't compete against the British. And so when the British showed up, the Patriots just murdered them. Since it was battle, it's not technically murder, but it was bad. And so Kings Mountain is going to be this kind of a moral victory for us, especially in the South. And we start to see Greene, Lafayette push and chase Cornwallis all throughout the Carolinas, North and South Carolina. And then eventually he has to start moving up into Virginia. And I'll get to that in just a second. But the style of fighting that we're going to see in the South, especially by the Patriots, is going to be different. We're going to use guerrilla warfare, these swift hit and run attacks. We have to turn to guerrilla warfare because after losing the battle, especially at Camden, we knew that the Patriots could not fight and win in an open field. It wasn't going to happen. Guerrilla warfare, their style was to disrupt communication and supply lines. But what the Patriots do would be hide behind trees, let the British get into a good shooting position for us, into basically a trap. We'd make a bunch of shots into them, be able to kill a lot of them, and then we'd run away. We wouldn't sit there and fight. It wasn't a whole idea of, let's make this a drawn-out battle. This was, we're going to kill 4, 5, 6, 7 of you, depending on how many men we had. Everyone shoots 2 or 3 times, and then we go. By the time they get to set their position in lines, we're out of there. A lot of this time, it's the communication and supply lines, and so it's not the regular army, which means that the soldiers aren't as trained and everything else, which gives us the advantage. We're able to get supplies that we were lacking. We were able to stop the British from getting their supplies, and it's going to be effective. It really is. Our best guerrilla warrior is Francis Marion. He's also known as a swamp fox. If you've seen the movie The Patriot, the Mel Gibson character is based off of Francis Marion. Okay. This style of war or battle is going to be very effective for the Patriots down in the South, and that's why we're pushing Cornwallis all throughout the Carolinas and then eventually into Virginia. It gets to the point where Cornwallis will stop on a peninsula called Yorktown in Virginia, and this is just for him a tragic mistake because it was about time, but the French fleet had actually finally showed up and controlled the Chesapeake Bay, which meant that Cornwallis was trapped on 3 sides on water, controlled by the French. And then on land, you're going to see Washington, Rochambeau, and the rest of the Patriots come down and I'm going to bring this down here for just a little bit, but you have Washington, Rochambeau, which is French commander, right? And then the American Alliance, Nathaniel Greene, Alexander Hamilton will be there. Von Steuben, basically everybody that we've talked about is going to be there. We'll have about 16,000 troops. Cornwallis has 8,000 troops, and the French fleet is controlling the water. Cornwallis absolutely just gets trapped. We will continuously bombard him in Yorktown to where you can see these are defensive lines. They would the British set these up, and we would attack and just put pressure on, recognizing and knowing we weren't going to attack early. We've got them trapped in one spot. We want to wear them down. We don't want to attack them when they're at full strength. We want them to be weakened a little bit. And so then eventually, once we know they're pretty weak, that's when Washington's going to talk with Alexander Hamilton and he wants to send Hamilton into a final massive assault. Well, before this happens, Britain, remember, couldn't escape because the French fleet controlled the water. We know that they have 8,000. We have 16,000. You can see the siege starts in September, at the end of September. It lasts not too long. It's only a couple weeks, 2-3 weeks, which may not seem like a lot. But when you're getting surrounded, there's nowhere to go, and they keep cannon firing into where you're at. A couple weeks is a long time. Just before Cornwallis, or just before Alexander Hamilton sets up on this major offensive, Cornwallis is going to surrender. This is going to be the last major battle of the war, and this is what's going to lead Cornwallis and the British to ask for peace. In this surrender, which happens on October 19th, 1781, Cornwallis is too embarrassed to actually surrender himself. And in class, I kind of went off on this. I think it shows the character of the British at that time, specifically the character of Cornwallis. If you lose, be a man. Surrender the proper way. They kept talking about how the British were more proper and honorable and everything else. And then when it comes down to it, he couldn't even surrender in an honorable way. He sends out his second in command. Washington won't accept it, so Washington sends that guy over to his second in command, and it's the second in commands that will surrender to each other because Cornwallis doesn't have the backbone to do it himself. Is really what it comes down to. With this, there is going to be some fighting that happens after this, but very, very minimal. It does take a while for the word to get out that the war is over. But this is the end of October 1781, and now we have to find a way to get peace between the two sides, and that's what the Treaty of Paris 1783 is all about. Now, the Treaty of Paris 1783 takes a long time to actually get set up. And the reason why is because the British are stalling. One of the most famous paintings actually is this painting here, John Jay, Benjamin Franklin, right? It's our delegates that are sitting at the negotiating table. But you can see that the British side, there's nobody there because they kept leaving so often that the person who was painting the portrait, now, they wouldn't just sit there for that long to do this. These guys would be kind of in the room. But the guy who was commissioned to paint the portrait couldn't do anything with the British negotiating team because they kept leaving so often. They would leave because of the shape of the tables, right? They didn't like the rectangles. They didn't like the squares. They didn't like the circles. They'd have a complaint and then leave. And then someone else, it's just one series of complaint after complaint after complaint with no real merit to it. It's a stall tactic. It's a power tactic of, okay, yeah, we lost you in war, but we're going to try to get whatever we can at a negotiation. Just because they lost doesn't mean they want to give up everything, even though they're going to have to. They're trying to stall as much as they can. Think if you've made a bet with your sibling and you've lost, eventually they're going to tell your parents and you're going to have to give up whatever it is was the bet, but you're going to stall as long as you can and you're going to try to make a deal and maybe not, whatever it might be, you're going to try to change the situation to benefit you. And so that's what the British are doing. With the Treaty of Paris 1783, this is what is going to officially end the war. It takes almost 2 years to sign, like I said, but there's 3 provisions that come out of it. One of them is that the borders are set. We can see the 2 different colors here. The borders are set for the Patriots. You can see the 13 colonies expanded all the way out to the Mississippi River, right? Basically, if you think of the United States today, other than Florida, from the East Coast to the Mississippi River, that is what is going to set the borders. Okay? Great Britain is going to be forced to recognize the United States. This is the thing that was hardest for the British. They didn't like the fact that they're going to have to admit that America is free and independent, but that's part of it. They lost the war. You lose, you suck it up, and you go home is what Britain's going to have to do. And so there's no real order, but Britain has to recognize a free and independent United States. Our borders are set, and then if you remember the proclamation line of 1763, this was when the king said that we were not allowed to move west of the Appalachian Mountains because he didn't want to keep paying for fighting the natives who had kept attacking settlers who kept moving over. We get rid of the proclamation line, and now colonists or Americans are able to move over to settle, and trade west of the original 13 colonies. So now we're going to start seeing this much more heavy numbers or high numbers of Americans moving from the West Coast or from the East Coast, from the coastal areas over into the Ohio River Valley for farming, for trade, for everything else. And so the Treaty of Paris officially ends the war. Britain has to recognize the United States as a free and independent nation. Our borders are set, and Americans can move and trade west of the Appalachian Mountains. Okay. We'll talk about what the government's like once we get into the next quarter. And we talk about how the first one wasn't very successful before we get to the Constitution, our current government, but we get to all that later. I hope this has been helpful. I think that this has been obviously different, but I'm hoping that you guys are still learning a lot. I hope it's still somewhat entertaining, and educational is a horrible way to say it, but hopefully you learn a little and you're a little entertained, if possible. I know I didn't make a lot of jokes with this one, but hopefully class has been fun. Thanks a lot, guys.